Yes, you're watching Daily Report on TV47. My name is Fred Indimuli. Today we're very much privileged to be granted this interview, to have a one-on-one sit-down with none other than Martha Karua, the NARC Kenya party leader. She has served as a Justice and Constitutional Affairs Minister in this country. She has also served as a member of Parliament for Gishugu constituency. She ran for presidency in 2013 on a NARC Kenya party ticket, and she was the Azimio La Umoja One Kenya Coalition presidential running mate in the 2022 elections. Senior Counsel, asante sana. Thank you for granting us this interview.
Thank you. You only forgot that I was water minister.
Apologies. She has also served as a water minister in the Kibaki administration.
Yes.
We've learned through the social media that you this year turned 66 years old, and I'd just like to wish you happy birthday belatedly.
September ended. I thought that ran through September, but thank you.
There is a significance also because Kenya is also turning 60 this year. And at that age, you tend to have a clarity of thought on what you stand for, clarity of thought on what you aspire to. And I'm just wondering if you may draw parallels between your own life and the existence of this republic. Do you think that we are somewhere where, as a nation, we are clear on where we're heading?
I think not. There are dark and ominous clouds hanging over Kenya. And because you said I draw a parallel, I want to tell you that I've always been clear of what I stand for and what I want. There's never been a cloudy day. I'm always sure of what I want and where I stand. Kenya has expressed its wish, our collective wish, of where we want to be and where we stand by the gift we gifted ourselves, the 2010 Constitution. We should therefore not be having dark and ominous clouds over us. Our guiding light, our North Star, should be the Constitution of Kenya 2010. But we now have a regime, which I'll call illegitimate, which does not respect rules or procedure, which flouts the Constitution and the laws of Kenya on a daily basis. And that is why today, Kenya at 60 is a sorry day. It's coming less than a week after the most inhuman demolitions at Maoko. And yes, they are not the first demolitions in Kenya. Two wrongs don't make a right. So you can't tell me because there were demolitions yesterday, we need to have that kind of thing. Mass demolitions, therefore causing destitution and homelessness to thousands. I don't know whether those children are going to school anymore. I don't know where they are living with their parents. I don't know what's happening to those people. It is atrocious, and it clearly shows we are a country without direction, without vision. And why do I say this of Maoko? This is whether occupied rightly or wrongly. I don't want to get into that debate. Portland had advertised previously, and it is still the case. They want to dispose of that land. They had even gone as far as saying they'll give the first option to those people who are occupying. Why would you then demolish? This is an administration, this Ruto administration, where Ruto himself, who has been in several land controversies, declared that anybody who builds on land that is not theirs, they will no longer be demolishing. The government itself or the administration itself will get in and help negotiate. What was so difficult about doing it at Maoko? Why demolish it with police and by force the next day after the judgment, knowing there is a right of appeal, as though to gleefully extinguish the subject matter so that even when you appeal, redress or being restored into your previous position will be impossible.
And on that issue about the Maoko demolitions, Azimio released a statement condemning the actions. And in that statement, there was a curious assertion about the amount of time between when the judgment was made by the court and when the government moved into action to demolish the houses. And they said that it would appear someone knew how the court was going to pronounce itself and stood ready to swing into action.
Yeah.
Isn't that an indictment on the judiciary, if at all, or some judicial officers, if at all that can happen?
It is a serious indictment that you can move almost simultaneously with the judgment, like you had a copy, and the police are ready. A demolition site is not a security site where you cannot even allow people to be in the vicinity, where you have to forcefully remove the owners. When they realized social media was getting blow-by-blow account of the demolition, they couldn't let anybody in, not even the Azimio leadership. Portland Cement has no power, no police officers to mount this.
Now, a lot can be said about the various organizations or institutions that would protect Kenyans from such kind of action, and the legal fraternity is one of them. You're a member of the LSK, you served as Justice and Constitutional Affairs Minister, you're a senior counsel yourself. What does it say about the action of the legal fraternity, lawyers in this case? Many of those who engaged in these transactions may have employed lawyers at one point or another. If at all the legal fraternity is not able to protect Kenyans through legal advice probably, from such actions, who will? That should be the first line of defense.
Let me say this. There are good lawyers and bad lawyers, like in any profession. Honest and dishonest lawyers. But the legal profession has acquitted itself as a body, as a defender, foremost defender of the rights of Kenyans, and especially under the current chairmanship. It is doing what it ought to do, assist society and the administration on matters of justice. I would say this, let us not shift the blame to professionals. The real blame, even though there are many others inside there who will share blame, is on the Ruto administration. You have sworn to defend and protect the Constitution. The job you claim to hold, whether legitimately or illegitimately in this case, is given to you by the people of Kenya. That is not a position. That is your birthright. It is bestowed on you by Kenyans by the Constitution to protect them. So everything you do must be in public good. This action of demolition is malicious because it is planned to inflict maximum damage. Even if at the end of the day demolition had to happen, you would allow people time to remove their treasured goods and to even salvage the building materials that they can. You know, you wouldn't pounce on them that way. Imagine schools are just about to close this month. Why would you do that to prevent children from closing school?
What would we say about the other organizations, now even away from the legal profession, the EACC, of which back in 2015, the then governor for Machakos had already written to the EACC, so they were appraised of what could be going on this piece of land, yet they failed to take action. We've seen the DCI come later after the fact to start investigating it. What would you say about these institutions?
Let me say this, that right now, the institutions I would call out is mainly the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, a constitutional commission. When you see rights of people being violated, we want to see the National Commission boldly telling the government the style of evicting people and demolitions is contrary to the letter and spirit of Constitution. It's against the law and it's against international law, and our Constitution makes international law part of the laws of Kenya. I would want to hear them calling out the government because we pay them. They are an independent commission. I know that occasionally they do it, but I want to hear their voice on this. And if it had come on day one, if they themselves as a commission had gone to court to halt the demolitions so that if they have to be done, they are done in a better manner, I would want to see people raise their voices, and they are raising their voices. against what is happening. Imagine if floods came, like we are expecting El Nino, or any accident occurs, like we've had terrible and grisly road accidents, where people are involved, numbers that are beyond 10. It's a humanitarian crisis, especially where it's more than 100 people. Even when the government has nothing to do with it and administration has nothing to do with it, the duty of first aid, of humanitarian assistance falls with the regime. Why would you create a humanitarian crisis? Evictions, even when they are legitimate, there has to be notice. And if it's a mass eviction, the administration has to involve itself in knowing what alternative sites can these people move to as they prepare. This is something that is so hurting. It is so bad. I'm imagining someone demolishing my home and then I have nowhere to go. Sometimes to build, people take loans. It's just crazy.
Questions are also being asked now that you've mentioned the Kenya National Human Rights Commission. And generally, the performance or the activities by civil society in responding to or agitating for the issues that afflict Kenyans at the moment appears to have dimmed down quite a bit. Questions have been raised about the response to even the cost of living, and people asking, where is the civil society that used to be as active probably back then when we were agitating for multi-party democracy?
I will say that civil society has been with us. I've noticed it myself. When we were demonstrating on cost of living, they had their own demonstrations and were brutalized as much as we were brutalized. When during the last demonstrations in July, there was mass murder of over 50 people, because the total demonstrations, there is more than 75 deaths that we know. If you look at the Azimio suit in court, civil society was there. There was a very good statement by LSK in conjunction with Amnesty, in conjunction with Kenya Human Rights Commission, the NGO. And in this particular one, there was a feeble voice also from the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. There were multiple institutions talking about it, including the Independent Medical Legal Unit, IMLU. So I won't want to indict civil society. I want to indict the Ruto regime for its brutality, that within a year, it has taken us further than even the infamous KANU regime ever took us.
Okay. Now, on this issue of the cost of living, it was top of the agenda for the Azimio coalition. It is the reason why, the main reason why people went to the streets. Now, with the ongoing talks with the National Dialogue Committee, which has asked for more days to finalize its report, it would appear that the issue of cost of living is not among the issues that both sides have agreed on, at least in the initial stages. What kind of approach, and I'm assuming you are privy to the kind of approach that the Azimio side is proposing on the table, what kind of approach is this that Azimio has in as far as tackling this issue of cost of living?
Let me first say that as a person, I'm deeply disappointed that we keep on moving the the deadline for the talks. Initially, Azimio had called for 30 days only. They should have been ended by 30th of August. Then came the talks, which then moved it to 60 days, beginning not 1st of August, but 1st of September. Now again, it's been shifted to 30th by another 30 days going into November. I don't know whether Jesus will return as we keep on moving the talks. I'm very unhappy, very uncomfortable with that. But our delegates in the talks seem to accept that there is necessity of that. And we go by the majority. So it's an uncomfortable position.
Do you seem to suggest that you're not in agreement with that kind of approach? I am
saying I'm totally uncomfortable. Any serious talks would not take more than 30 days. I've been involved in talks in this country I was involved in IPPG. If I am not wrong, we took a record 2 weeks. And we did constitutional and legal amendments. And this was an ad hoc committee of parliament. We didn't even go to pass a motion. It's not necessary for people to pass a motion. It is the agreements that you bring that then go to parliament to be passed either as legislation or as policy. So even going to parliament is sort of like dilly-dallying, filibustering. And if you remember the post-election crisis of 2007, the Annan talks took just a month. They were very serious. And they had very serious and far-reaching implications. We had a crisis bigger than the one we have, where there is commitment of the regime. Because people outside government have commitment because they're the ones who agitate for the talks. Where a regime is serious, talks should never exceed a month. And where you see a regime bringing its own issues, which were not subject of the demonstrations, know that they're buying time. The Ruto regime needs time. Kenyans need action. For them, time is a savior. It looks, for me, from where I sit, I am saying that we have to be very careful, and this I tell to our delegates all the time. And I say it when we are in Azimio meetings. We have to be very, very careful not to unwittingly become agents of the ploys of the Ruto regime, buying them time. Why are we prioritizing constitutional amendment like that was the crisis? The crisis we have up to now is cost of living. It is issues of rule of law, like that demolition of Maoko. Cost of living has trembled, has quadrupled, has gone up more times than it was at the time we demonstrated.
And I asked you the question on what kind of proposals, especially on the issue of cost of living, does Azimio have, and probably because what they've presented in the table?
There has to be subsidies. There's no other way you can bring down costs, and you have to weed out corruption. Because fuel, it's not market prices. Market prices is a small fraction. We are funding corruption. Why did we put a tax of 8%? You can raise taxes by broadening the tax base. But if you are going to forgive your cronies who owed tax, and we have seen those settlements, you want to freeze the poor people, the vulnerable, in order to fund corruption and largesse in government. I think things are upside down, and we have to be very, very careful. We are dealing with very slippery characters in the Ruto regime, led by himself.
If at all these talks are going to be of any consequence, what in your own opinion would be the most notable or useful consequence of these talks?
Cost of living, and it's not just about issues of food and energy. It's about school. It's about health services. All the things in Article 43, basic needs. It's about how, people being destitute and having where to stay. We give social support so that people stop to be destitute. But now it's a regime making hundreds of people destitute in Maoko. The next is electoral justice. We must have a thorough audit of the 2022 elections. We cannot be able to clean up our electoral system unless if we examine and see where the electoral vote is leaking. We've been having cosmetic reforms since 2007, which we thought the 2010 constitution would cure. The cure will come by enforcing the law so that those involved in malpractices are punished, not lionized like they've been lionizing criminals. Then people will know that it will cost you personally and very dearly to subvert the law and the electoral process. So an audit, those two items, not any constitutional review. If we wanted to fulfill the 2/3 gender rule, we actually do not need any constitutional amendments. because Article 27 says it, the IEBC can assess what is needed and distribute those posts proportionately to parties. The Ruto regime, nobody has tied their hands. Why isn't cabinet compliant? Why aren't the posts of PSs and other government appointments compliant? This is a non-compliant regime telling you that open the constitution, then we will comply. If you cannot comply with it as it is, my problem is you teach them how to open the constitution. The next thing they'll be doing a Museveni or whatever, extending the term. And you have heard them hinting.
Yet the conversation increasingly is heading towards that some of the consequences of these talks could actually lead to a possible relook at our laws. Do you think that it is time to revisit that?
No, the urgency of now, cost of living, electoral justice. And should those issues bring the need to relook at our laws, then I would be party to it.
What do you say to the suggestion that, to the proposal to create the office of the official leader of opposition?
Again, totally unnecessary. The opposition in parliament in a presidential system is called the minority. And yes, in Azimio, a majority supported BBI. I was in the no team. And I am not saying the constitution cannot be amended. Once we deal with the urgent issues of cost of living and electoral justice, and those issues will cover rule of law issues which this regime is not following, then I would be comfortable, because as a nation, we cannot say that those who find there is a need should not have an opportunity to persuade those who feel there isn't. So I am saying, because there are a number of people who feel it should be opened, can we deal with first things first? And then I'll have ears, and many Kenyans will have ears to listen to that debate.
Let's now go back to probably to the genesis of how this talks even began. Yeah. And it is said, and I think there were revelations that the Azimio, La Umoja One Kenya coalition leader, Ruto-Odinga, and the president, William Ruto, had a meeting brokered by the former Nigerian president, Olusegun Obasanjo. Are you comfortable with that approach, or would you have preferred a different kind of route to this discussions?
Let me say this, that there is no route, hard and fast rule of which route. But once you meet, and our leader in Azimio did come back to us before anything was farmed, and we helped him to farm up. So he fulfilled his responsibility of collegial decision-making within Azimio.
Was a decision for him to agree to a meeting, a collective decision within Azimio?
Let's not go too deep, because you cannot fetter a leader. Even for me as a leader of NARC Kenya, I can meet, but I cannot commit. You commit after you come back to your executive. In this case, he came back to us. He did not commit. I see nothing wrong in the approach. But I see something wrong in how the regime is making us dance around a pole, getting nowhere, you know? There is sincerity. There is sincerity in our leader, in Azimio La Umoja. He's a man with a large heart, a man committed to the welfare of Kenyans. But on the other side, I see a fox, a cunning fox, that has no intention of honoring the needs of Kenyans or even the laws and even the talks. And if it is different, may I be pleasantly surprised. And I will withdraw and apologize. But for now, I see a cunning fox.
Yes, you're watching Daily Report. We're still here with Martha Karua, the NARC Kenya party leader. But for now, let's take a short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching Daily Report on TV47. We continue with this discussion with Martha Karua, the NARC Kenya party leader. Let's now focus on the issues around the Azimio formation. Yeah. And in just this week, a lot has been said about 2027. and what will happen then. There was that... probably the media was a bit too rush in saying,
go for it.
and saying that, that Raila Odinga had endorsed Kalonzo. It is something similar to what the president said when on his visit to Nyanza region, that he's looking forward to facing Kalonzo come 2027. And I'm wondering, is this a conversation that is alive today within the Azimio formation?
No, and I think my leader, Raila Odinga, did clarify that that conversation is not there. But let us first assume that he indeed endorsed Kalonzo, my brother Kalonzo Musyoka. There would be nothing wrong with it, because he is entitled to endorse whomever he chooses. But that doesn't lock the doors for anyone else. The power is with the people. So I see absolutely nothing wrong, even if we were to assume that the endorsement happened. And I also see it not as a point of disagreement in Azimio. We are not together on the basis that we tether the ambition of any one of us. And the ambitious ones are not only those you see. There are many other behind us and in the country. And everybody's dream is valid. Therefore, it is not a point of contention. So long as Azimio moves forward, focused and democratic, then if it has 100 candidates, it will be able to sort it out.
On your own ambition, do you see this working towards your own ambitions come 2027?
I have not talked of my ambitions, nor am I ready to talk about them. Right now, we are talking about cost of living. We are talking about electoral justice. Those are the two issues. And I do not wish for my view to be clouded by issues that are far off. Yeah.
Now, we've had a history where political parties, political formations, including coalitions, are only formed for the purposes of an election, and immediately after that, it is difficult to sustain that unity to the next electoral cycle. How different is it for Azimio this time round? Do you see something that will hold this formation together?
Let me first correct you. There was CORD. It survived. A few people left, but it survived and moved on towards the elections in 2017. Okay? I was a friend of CORD, and towards the end, I moved on to support Uhuru. A few of us moved, but CORD survived and went to the elections under a different name. NASA also survived and morphed into Azimio. A few people moved on to the other side. So it is not true that coalitions are formed only for elections. They somewhat survive. Even though people like Kalonzo had left NASA, he returned. In fact, he went to Azimio earlier than me. So those arrangements, some people leave, but there is a core that remains. Azimio is no different. A majority of us are family where we were. And you can see us moving on steadily. And people may continue, some to leave, others to join. But I know that unity of purpose will survive the test of time, and there is a core that will remain.
The questions have been asked about the necessity or usefulness of the Kamwene Unity Forum. And then therefore the question would be, how does it tie into this larger unity within Azimio? Or is it a vehicle that would take its own course?
I'm very happy that Kamwene is exciting the political landscape. Kamwene is a loose formation. It's not a political party. I'm still chair of NARC Kenya. Kioni is in Jubilee. And even Governor Mureithi is in Jubilee. Nani is Munya. Governor Munya is in PNU. And many other people have their political parties or belong to political parties. It is a forum like any other. You have your chama. This is a political chama for people of the mountain. It is very clear that there is marginalization, or it looks to us that there is marginalization, both political and economic, targeted at that region. This is to resist any form of marginalization targeting the people of Mount Kenya. And that chama Then we go out to our political parties, carrying those objectives of unity of purpose in our larger formations. Number two, whatever we advocate for Mount Kenya is not to harm the interests of others. We operate under the rule of law. We believe in the rule of law. Therefore, advocating for my rights cannot harm your rights, because I'm aware that while advocating for my rights, I must mind yours. So there is no way Kamwene is of harm to anybody. It's of benefit. And even in a clan, if the houses that form the clan are divided, that clan cannot have unity. So when you have a unity of your family and then you go into the clan, the unity of the family strengthens the clan. The unity of Mount Kenya would strengthen the unity of Kenya.
The question therefore would be, are the interests that Kamwene Unity Forum is looking to secure for the Mount Kenya region, are they not secure within the larger Azimio formation?
They are. In fact, we shall input on the larger Azimio, but we must caucus. This is just a loose caucus. Yesterday, I saw 40 people from Mombasa caucusing. How come interest is never raised when other regions caucus? But when Mount Kenya people caucus, people are sleepless, even when just a handful caucusing. Yesterday, I saw a very large, of people from the coast. I've seen people from Luhyaland caucusing. I see my leader going back and they having not a caucus, but the other time there was Lake Basin formation. Those are caucuses. And they do not work against Azimio. I see my brother Kalonzo Musyoka caucusing also. And I see every other leader caucusing. Those home caucuses actually will eventually strengthen not just Azimio, but the unity of Kenyans. And beyond those caucuses, you'll see me in many spaces. You'll see me with civil society. You'll see me with any other group that calls me. And all those caucuses will pour in strength into the spaces I belong to.
Let's now talk briefly about the issues around Mount Kenya and the Mount Kenya interests surrounding the Mount Kenya region. And the whole debate about representation, one man, one shilling, one vote, comes into play. There is the expected boundaries delimitation and review, whose deadline comes up in March. And that would have addressed a lot of this debate. Is this the kind of discussion that Kamwene Unity Forum is looking at?
Obviously, the number of MPs we have in proportion to the population, our voice has been diminished. That is one of the issues. As Kioni famously put it, when Ruto went to Sagana, and leaders from Mount Kenya tried to bring up that matter, reports in the press were that they were shut up. And therefore, from Sagana, instead of one man, one vote, one shilling, the mantra that came is one man, one plate, one soda. You remember there was Muchele na nyama. Yeah? So they were told to be content with one man, one plate, one soda. These are the things we are discussing.
Are you saying Kamwene was in reaction or in...
No. Among the issues. You asked me among the issues. Yes. Remember that if it is people like Kioni, Mureithi and all the others and Munya, they were actually part of the BBI and those were the issues they were pushing. I was not a fan of BBI, but I'm a fan of equity and equality. And the Constitution clearly spells out that after 8 years, after 10 years, the constituencies saved are no longer saved, and delimitation of boundaries must follow as closely as possible population, because you represent people. And even allocation of money should follow population. Issues of marginalization should and must be addressed. But there is Article 204 of the Constitution on Equalization Fund, where marginalization can be looked into. And marginalization is mainly on infrastructure, basic infrastructure that delivers the basic needs to the people. And those are issues you will find in the hitherto marginalized areas, which include certain sections of urban places. Like in Nairobi, all our sprawling slums, those people are totally marginalized. The people in arid areas, ASO areas, are marginalized still in terms of infrastructure. And blame is to the successive governments of this country, but also some blame, proportionate blame, to the governors who have occupied the positions. Because if you look at the billions that have gone into, we are not able to see proportionately even a tenth of the marginalization having been covered. There is some good that has come, but not proportionate. So we need two things. We need equality of vote. We need equality in share of the bulk funds, whether for devolution, CDF, and any other. But we also need equalization fund to be properly funded, not 10 billion. It should have hundreds of billions for infrastructure, but again, shared and utilized above board.
Let's stay with this debate or discussion around delimitation of boundaries and the deadline specified by the Constitution. This is the very first time under this new under the Constitution 2010 that we are encountering a deadline with regard to boundaries delimitation and review. Yet, without IEBC in place, it looks highly likely that we will not be able to meet that deadline of March 2024 in ensuring that that process happens. The IEBC itself has said once the chairman is in place, they would need at least 18 months to conduct that exercise. Do you foresee a crisis, given the kind of debate that we've just had, the issue of protected constituencies, of which once the review is due, they will no longer be protected?
The crisis we have is to first clean up that space. Clean up that space. And I would blame any crisis in terms of time directly on Ruto and his regime. They harassed and pushed away 4 commissioners who would be in place now, just because they dissented with this blue-eyed boy, Wafula Chebukati, and the 2 others. And where the court, if I may use its language, made a hot air ruling that made a minority of 3 the majority and ignored the protests of 4. Thereafter, Ruto hounded them out of office. So that crisis is of his own making. Yeah, we should not rush anything because of that. Because this is a very critical institution. And I keep saying, if we don't set right electoral justice in this country, it may end up being the ruin of Kenya. We have a responsibility to set it right without any undue pressure.
If we fail to meet that deadline, and we failed before to ensure the 2/3 gender rule is implemented for about 13 years now, aren't we setting a precedent where we can defy some provisions of the Constitution and still proceed as if nothing has happened?
But the Ruto regime has been so good in defying all that. If you look at the cabinet he employed, it all defies Chapter 6. Very few can pass Chapter 6. If you look at the characters he has appointed to public offices, they all defy Chapter 6. So, what the crisis is having this regime in power. That is the greater crisis. So let's take every day at a go. Let's not just focus on one item. We have a crisis all round.
You are among the few people who insist that implementation of the Constitution as it is should take precedence as opposed to any attempts to review it. Yet we are seeing that there have been enough attempts, the Punguza Mzigo, BBI, and other attempts to review it. Why do you disagree with those voices?
Luckily, I'm not the only one. There are many. you begin by trying to fit the outfit that has been made for you before telling the tailor, adjust here. Because until you fit it, you can't see where it's not fitting. This constitution, we have never applied chapter 6. In fact, if chapter 6 was ever applied, the landscape of 2013 would have looked totally different. In fact, now the refuge for those who have cases of economic crimes against the public is elected office. So it's like everything is upside down. Can we try to be honest to ourselves? Because this is a document negotiated by Kenyans for over 20 years. Let us try to at least implement it. Even as we seek to adjust where we may find necessary. But in my view, it is wrong to allow a regime that disobeys the constitution and the laws under it with impunity to be the champions of supposed amendments or corrections.
It would not be fair to end this interview without asking you about devolution. And we've seen the squabbles between governors and their deputies, the struggles between governors and the respective county assemblies. Case in point, perfect example in Meru, where Governor Kawira Mwangaza is facing a lot of trouble with the county assembly. Do you think it is the crisis a creation of the constitution, or is there another discussion we should be having, probably to allow, to broaden the role of the county assembly members?
I think that this crisis is a creation of Senate, which unfortunately has not played its role as a protector of devolution properly. The threshold they set in the Wambora case, the very poor threshold for impeachment of a governor is what has come back to haunt. If they had set a proper criteria on impeachment, we would not be having impeachments that every time a governor disagrees with members of the county assembly, they shout impeachment. And counties also have failed to understand, and only Senate could have made them understand, that the power to impeach is not personal, to use at will. It's on behalf of the people, and it's for the most serious constitutional breach, you know? The impeachment of a governor is same as impeachment of a president. And I argued the very first time they wanted to impeach Governor Kawira, and they actually did, and Senate saved her, was that what she was being accused of, roadside appointments. William Ruto had already made roadside appointments and had not yet been impeached. If you remember, he had appointed Kome as IG, forgetting there was a police service commission. They later quietly went and regularized. And miraculously, his candidate was interviewed and became whatever. Miraculously in quotes. So if Kawira was being impeached for employing someone, then there should have been a Ruto impeachment. And it's not Ruto alone. Some of his CSs, including Kindiki, who is a lawyer, he had roadside promotion. If you remember, of an officer at whatever. I am sure he also went round and went back to the commission for that. I gave a few examples. So, whereas I'm not saying governors should be let to do wrong things, Senate must rethink how they handle impeachments. When they sit as a court. They should get proper advice, and they have lawyers among their ranks. And you don't have to be a lawyer to know what would be a gross violation of the Constitution. And they should raise the bar. The Senate's role is to be a guardian angel of devolution. Wake up, the Kenyan Senate, and play your role.
And finally, now that we're talking about the Senate, generally the Houses of Parliament have been accused of neglecting their duty. What would you say, because you've served in the National Assembly, what would you say about the conduct of the 13th Parliament?
I would just say that they are a pale shadow of what a parliament should be. That is not to say that they are not, it's not to ignore the fact that there are some very, very distinguished legislators who are doing marvelous work. But generally speaking, a pale shadow of what Parliament should be. And at the risk of being told that I'm being selfish, I think we last had a Parliament in 2012, the 12th Parliament. Yeah. We haven't had a proper parliament afterwards.
Martha Karua, na Kenya party leader. Any final thoughts to add?
I just want to tell Kenyans we are passing through a hard time. We have something to do with it. Let each one of us ask themselves, what is it that you and I can personally do to make this nation? What can you do if you are in the judiciary to be true to your oath of office? What can you do if you're in the police force? If you're a procurement officer? If you're a doctor? If you're an ordinary citizen? If you're a voter? How else can you employ your vote? We need a conversation with ourselves. Things have gone south, but only me and you can clean this mess. I have pledged to spend my life attempting to clean the mess. I will do this so long as I have breath in me. Are you committing yourself?
Thank you so much, Martha Karua, and even for agreeing to this interview. You're watching Daily Report on TV47.